Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this third session on Israel-Palestine conflict. Now, yesterday we studied about how Theodor Herzl got very disillusioned with the European society after he saw how Captain Alfred Dreyfus was being accused of treason and was being made into a scapegoat just because he was a Jew. And he was able to see the entire anti-Jewish atmosphere in France at that point of time. He ended up concluding that Jews are no longer safe in Europe and we need a country of our own. We cannot live in a multicultural society like Europe anymore, where there is a constant threat to our way of life and to our existence. So he was able to meet a lot of Jewish leading figures in Europe. He traveled to various places and tried to convince leading Jewish figures. And in the end, he succeeded when there was a Jewish Congress organized in Basel in Switzerland in 1897 regarding his theory, his idea, his vision of creating an independent country only for the Jewish community. Now, the next question was where to create this country? Where in this world can this country be created? So the first thought that came to their mind was about Uganda in Africa, but then it was quickly ruled out because it was considered unfeasible. It was not really feasible. Then they thought about, every day we pray that we should be able to go to the Holy Land. Holy Land means promised land, Canaan, which I've already explained to you earlier in one of the earlier videos. And the Jewish religious texts also talk about how a time will come when all the Jews will come back to the promised land. Third thing was that Jews were respected a lot by Ottomans as well as by the Arabs, and it was very common during that era or throughout history to find Jews holding high positions in the Ottoman or the Arab courts. Even the Muslim religious text, the Quran, refers to the Jews as people of the book, so they're highly respected even in Islam religion. And most importantly, we need to understand that in 1914, this was the Ottoman Empire. It was covering a major part of modern-day Iraq, Syria, Jordan, then Egypt, even the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula, Libya, Tunisia, North Africa, and then going right up to Romania and Bulgaria in Europe. So it was a vast kind of an empire ruled by Muslims. And Ottomans had very high regard for the Jewish community, and it was very, very common to find Jews holding high positions in the Ottoman court. However, by the time this whole thing was happening, the Ottoman Empire had become very weak financially, and Theodor Herzl and his entire delegation knew this. So they thought of an idea that we'll go and meet the Sultan, and we will offer to pay off the complete debt, the complete foreign debt of the entire Ottoman Empire in return for Palestine. That is the place where all the history of the Jewish religion is. Jerusalem, Jericho, Hebron, and these are all places which are extremely important for the Jewish faith, and all of these places were in Palestine at that point of time. This is where Palestine was. Modern day Israel stands on what was Palestine at that point of time. So in 1896, a delegation went with Theodor Herzl, and they tried to meet Sultan Abdul Hamid II so that they can make this offer, but then they were not able to meet him. However, they were able to meet his vizier, and they offered this thing to the vizier. They made this offer that give us Palestine, and in return, we will be able to pay off your entire debt. However, the vizier declined, the Ottoman administration, the Ottoman rulers in general declined, because by 1896, they were already facing a problem of Jewish migration from Europe. In Europe, there were official state-sponsored pogroms happening, especially in Russia. State-sponsored pogroms, pogrom, P-O-G-R-O-M, is a term used for those acts of violence against the Jews, which were carried out with state's sanction, state's permission, and if you were involved in it, there will be no punishment to you. There was complete immunity. So people who used to carry out this violence, they were never punished. In fact, officially, they were completely safe. So Jews were trying to escape that persecution, that violence, and right from 1870s, the Turks had started noticing that more and more people were traveling from Europe and trying to stay in Palestine to get this safety there. It was becoming more like a safe haven. And that's why then they had started making laws to ensure that Jews do not end up settling in Palestine to make it into a safe haven for all those who are trying to escape persecution from Europe. And that's why in 1871, the then Sultan, that is Abdul Hamid II, had even passed laws to that effect. For instance, he had made it a law that 80% of the main area of Palestine was state territory, so nobody can buy land there without state approval. And then other thing was he restricted the number of days the European Jews can stay in Palestine to 30 days. That ways he tried to ensure that it doesn't end up becoming a permanent refuge, a sort of permanent safe haven for those Jews who are just trying to escape persecution from Europe. The Ottomans were already dealing with Jews migrating from Europe. Jews had started trickling into Palestine, seeing it as a safe haven to escape from persecution in Europe. Now, you need to understand this religious concept of aliyah. In the Jewish religious texts, this term aliyah is used for the journey which the Jews will make to come back to the promised land. It talks about aliyah, that a time will come when Jews from across the world who have been forced to leave promised land in the past, they will one day come back to the promised land. And that's why there have been the instances in history where there have been mass migrations from Europe to the Palestinian territories is referred to as Aliyah, the first wave, second wave, third wave, fourth wave. Aliyah refers to going to Jerusalem, Jews returning to Israel from exile of 2000 years. I've already explained about the 4 exiles in one of the earlier videos. Now, first Aliyah, first wave of migration took place between 1882 to 1903, approximately 35,000 Jews, mainly from the Russian Empire, due to pogroms in Ukraine, which was a part of Russian Empire at that point of time, had taken place between 1881 to 1884, and they had immigrated to Palestine via Syria. Second wave, that is second Aliyah, took place between 1904 to 1914. Nearly 40,000 Jews emigrated mainly from Russia to Palestine via southwestern part of Syria, following pogroms and outbreaks of anti-Semitism in that country. And that's why, taking note of this, right from 1871, there were laws formulated by the Ottomans to ensure that it doesn't end up becoming a permanent refuge for the Jews who are seeking safety. The Ottomans under Sultan Abdul Aziz, his reign was from 1861 to 1876, had declared that 80% of Palestine will be state property, so that Jews will not be able to buy land there, and you cannot buy land without approval from the emperor. So in 1871, they came up with this rule. In 1883, Sultan Abdul Hamid II, his reign was from 1876 to 1909, restricted the acquisition of Palestinian lands and decided to take the strategic territory himself. 1900, Sultan Abdul Hamid II restricted Jewish stay in Palestinian territory to 30 days. So you need to go back to where you came from after 30 days. You cannot stay more than that. He further prohibited the acquisition of territories to foreign Jews in the Ottoman Empire, including Palestine. It was declared that the Ottoman Empire was not a settlement area for people who were exiled from Europe. So it's not as if these measures were anti-Jewish. It's just that he was trying to ensure that the demographics of that area do not change because of foreign migration. Till that point, anyways, the Ottomans were facing a problem with lot of rebellions and revolts by the Arabs in various areas. So anyways, the Ottoman Empire was becoming weak. So he wanted to avoid a situation where, due to this migration, it will further fuel resentment and anger and probably a revolt by the Arabs or Muslims. Now, he became a major problem, Sultan Abdul Hamid II, in that Jewish vision. So again, the same thing which they did in 1953 in Iran. This happened much before that. Now, the Jewish leading figures, especially the wealthy people, they conspired with a group known as Young Turks. Now, this was one group which wanted democracy in Ottoman Empire, in Turkey, not just the whole of Ottoman Empire, but in Turkey. So they kind of worked with them hand in gloves, and then they were able to overthrow Sultan Abdul Hamid too. And after that, the government which came in power, mainly all of them were part of this Young Turk movement. They then allowed the settlement of Jews in Palestine in return for the financial and other aid which they got in their endeavor to overthrow Sultan Abdul Hamid II. After Sultan Abdul Hamid II was overthrown, permission was granted for Jews to settle in Palestine. Now, the next episode, Balfour Declaration of 1917. Now, see, First World War happened from 1914 to 1918. Turkey was on the side of Germany. They lost the war. So the entire Ottoman Empire was then divided between the victors. And a major part of the Middle East ended up going to France and England under the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Sir Mark Sykes was the British diplomat, and Francois Georges Picot was the French diplomat who redrew lines on the map. And that's how you see modern day Jordan, Syria, Iraq. They were all carved up under this Sykes-Picot Agreement. Now, by then, that is, when the Second World War was about to end, Britain had become very weak financially and they wanted money. Now, Jews had a lot of money, so they wanted to appease the Jewish community, and they knew that the Zionist movement was gaining foothold, it was gaining momentum. Zionism is the concept of bringing Jews back to Palestine and making it a country only for the Jewish people. So that is the Zionist movement. Okay. So then, how to appease the Jews and how to get more money from them, they came up with this idea that we will support their Zionist vision. And that's how this Balfour Declaration of 1917 came about. Now, this is the actual document of Balfour Declaration of 1917. It is one of the landmark things in the story of the creation of the State of Israel. If you read it, I have the text ready. Now, Foreign Office, November 2nd, 1917, dear Lord Rothschild. Rothschild family is very famous in history. They have played a major role in the evolution of the banking system in Europe and across the world. You can read more about it on Google. Now, Baron Rothschild was a leading Zionist figure in the UK at that point of time. This letter was addressed to him by Arthur James Balfour, who was the foreign secretary at that point of time. He was also a prime minister previously. He had also been a prime minister of UK previously. I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the cabinet. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. Yours sincerely, Arthur James Balfour. So this was a nod given by the UK government that we are with you, go ahead and create that state. And Palestine by then had ended up coming in the lap of the Britishers under the division of the Turkish territories between France and England. So then they further facilitated Jewish migration. Third Aliyah took place between 1919 and 1923. 40,000 Jews, mainly from Eastern Europe, arrived in the wake of World War I. The British occupation of Palestine, Balfour Declaration of 1917, further facilitated Jewish immigration. Jewish individuals and groups started buying land, even if at an exorbitant price. So they started working towards this vision of buying land and then converting it into a Jewish country in the future. The Arabs started sensing a conspiracy that something is wrong. And then that's when, for the first time in history, tension started between the Arabs and Jews. Otherwise, historically, they had very good relations. In the Arab territories, you will not find cases of organized pogroms or organized violence against Jews in history. They were very respected, very cordial relations. And then riots started. The 1920 Nabi Musa riots, also known as 1920 Jerusalem riots, took place between 4th to 7th of April 1920 in and around the old city of Jerusalem. 5 Jews and 4 Arabs were killed and several hundred were injured. As a result of this, Haganah, the future Israeli Defense Force, got created in 1920 to safeguard Jews and Jewish property. It was an offspring of Hashomer. Hashomer was an organization which was created in 1909 by Jews for the defense of Jews and Jewish community in Palestine, because they knew that a day will come when the Arabs will sense what we are up to, that we are silently working towards creating our country by expelling them, buying land and expelling them from Palestine, and then they will attack us. And so we need to keep our security force ready. This Haganah went on to become what we know as Israeli Defense Forces today, the Israeli Army. And most of the prime ministers and presidents of Israel between 1950 to around 2000, in their young days, were a part of Haganah. Even Nobel Prize winners like Shimon Peres and Yitzhak Rabin were a part of Haganah in their young days. 1921, the Jaffa riots took place between May 1 to May 7, 1921. Death of 47 Jews and 48 Arabs. Another 146 Jews and 73 Arabs were wounded. 1929 Palestine riots, also known as Burak Uprising, took place between 23 to 29 August 1929. Started from Jerusalem and spread to other parts of Palestine. Nearly 150 Jews and around 120 Arabs were killed. Haganah members, disillusioned by its failure to defend Jews and considering Haganah not aggressive enough, formed a separate group known as Irgun in 1931. This Irgun was a very, very violent group, and it carried out some of the most brutal and inhuman acts against the Arabs, which we will discuss tomorrow. Okay, then fourth Aliyah took place between 1924 to 1929. 82,000 Jews arrived, many as a result of persecution in Poland and Hungary. And then, of course, we know fifth Aliyah between 1929 1939, with the rise of Nazism in Germany and all the anti-Semitic activities which took place in Germany at that point of time, a new wave of around 2.5 lakh immigrants arrived. Majority of these, that is nearly 1,74,000, arrived between 1933 and 1936. Now, in this chart, you will be able to see that in 1822, the Jewish population in Palestine was just 24,000, which was 8% of the total population in Palestine at that point of time. 90 years later, 1931, it became 1,74,000, which was 17% of the total population of Palestine. 1936, it rose to around 3,84,000, which was 28% of the total population of Palestine. 1946, it became 5,43,000 roughly, which was 30% of the total population of Palestine. 1947, around 6,30,000, which was 32% of the total population of Palestine. This gives you a picture how the demographics started changing, how outsiders who are not the native indigenous people of that land started increasing in numbers. And that's where the Arabs started feeling threatened that, our existence, our country's identity is at stake. Now comes UN Resolution 181, passed on 29th November 1947. Now, guys, Second World War ended in 1945. Europe was completely bankrupt. The European system of economy of society had completely collapsed. They badly needed money to rebuild themselves, and that's when the US has offered the Marshall Plan. If you're able to see a very vibrant and developed Europe today, it's because of the Marshall Plan, the economic package which US gave to Europe after the Second World War. Europe badly needed money. Money was to come from US. US economy was completely in control of the Jewish lobby. If not completely, it was heavily influenced by the Jewish lobby. Jews were the richest people in the US at that point of time. Even today, they form the bulk of the business community in the US. They are the wealthiest community in the US. So, this created an opportunity for the Jewish community in the US to sort of arm twist and coerce other countries, Europeans as well as third world countries, to be with them, to play a positive role with them in getting this resolution passed. They arm twisted them, threatening them, blackmailing them. You can say that we will not give you financial aid if you do not help us pass this resolution. So they got a majority backing for this resolution, and this resolution recommended partition of Palestine into two states. 56% of land to the Jewish state, whereas they were just 30% of the population of Palestine. So it was a very unfair division under this UN resolution. Main cities with Palestinian Arab majorities and the important coastline from Haifa to Jaffa given to Israel. The plan would deprive the Palestinian state of key agricultural lands and seaports, which led the Palestinians to reject the proposal. So this is how Palestine was in 1917, sorry. You can see now green spots appearing by the time 1946 arrived. This was Jewish-owned land. And then, as per the United Nations Resolution 181, the vision of Israel was this. The green area, which you are able to see on the map, was the future state of Israel under the Partition Plan. Okay, so imagine how unfair this whole system was, this whole plan was. 43% land to the Arabs, even though they were they were actually the majority, 70% of the population in 1947. Soon fighting broke out between Palestinian Arabs and the Jews, but Jews were better trained. They had been preparing for this for decades, and they were more resourceful in terms of weaponry. They were better organized. They were more intelligent, more shrewd. The Arabs were not a match for them. May 14, 1948, British mandate expired. The British started leaving that place. Israel declared independence on May 15, 1948, holding the area given to it under UN Resolution 181. Night of May 15, 1948, Israel was attacked jointly by Egypt, Jordan, and Iraq. Internal civil war and intermittent fighting against Arabs continued for nearly 2 years. The Jewish groups were very well organized. They were able to not only resist the Arabs, they were able to increase the territory under their control from 56% to 78%. Egypt took control of Gaza, Jordan took control of West Bank, including Jerusalem. Jewish forces were able to not only resist the Arabs, but also expand beyond the 56% land given under Partition Plan. Then 1949 Armistice Treaty was signed, status quo, Israel ended up gaining control of 78% of historic Palestine. So this was Israel as per the partition plan, but 1949 it was able to push back Arabs, gain more territory, and this is how Israel is today officially. So 78% of historic Palestine is Israel today. So that's the story of the creation of the State of Israel. I'm sure you must have found this video informative. Please don't forget to like it, share it with all your friends who are preparing for SSB or any other government job. Encourage them to subscribe to our channel. Tomorrow, we will cover in detail the first of the three main issues around which this conflict stands today and the reasons why it is not resolved even till date. It will be a very useful video for you. Please make sure you watch it. And if you are preparing for SSB and you have not seen our Psychology Foundation course videos, then please go to the playlist Psychology Foundation course, 2-week psychology course. We have uploaded free there. Please watch it. It will help you a lot. And don't forget to watch the videos which we are uploading in the personal interview playlist also. It will help you a lot in preparing for personal interview in an in-depth manner. So I'll end today's video here. I'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Till then, please take very good care of yourself and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.